Okay, good evening. I'm going to be talking to you guys about how social media negatively affects our society today. Some of my subpoints are social media negatively affects today's student, the job market, and mental health of society. CNBC did a study in 2012 to see how much time a single person spends on social media in 1 month. They came up with that a single person spends 6.5 hours of social media in 1 month. That 6.5 hours you can spend doing so many other activities. You can learn to drive, you can learn to cook. Yet we spend 6.5 hours of nothingness, just scrolling endlessly. So the ways that it affects the student is, according to a study done by the Marion Hospital Center for Behavioral and Preventative Medicine, many students are engaged nearly half the day in some form of media use. The study found students were spending nearly 12 hours a day using the internet for social media. Researchers found much of this high-use media was associated with the lower grade point averages and other negative academic outcomes. My senior year of high school, iPads were implemented into our curriculum. Although they were used to teach us how to incorporate technology into our everyday learning and help us, they ultimately, at the end of the year, they did a survey, and we all agreed that implementing the iPads into the classroom had a negative effect on our learning. We spent class hours scrolling through Facebook, updating Instagram, checking Twitter, versus absorbing all that learning and using that time to engage in discussion. So that just proves the point that having social media inside the classroom does not help us focus. It lowers our GPA. It affects the job market. According to IC.com, many employers have begun to follow up future employees using popular social media sites such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. This means you can go into a job interview, you can have all the qualities they're looking for, be fully qualified, but then they can do a follow-up background check of sorts to find that, go on your social media websites, find you tagged in unsavory pictures on Facebook, find status updates of distaste. Based on that, they can make judgments of you to see how you interact in every day and your character. In today's world, when the lines between professional life and work life are blurred so easily, it is very pertinent that social media you put out portrays you the way you would want a future employer to see you. It also affects our communication in the workplace and face-to-face. Psychologist Regina Graham said kids are not learning the basic communication social skills needed to hold a conversation face-to-face. Therefore, they will ultimately grow up into adults who don't know social etiquette when holding conversations. Social media is hindering our communication face-to-face. Simple challenges such as asking strangers for directions, that's becoming a great challenge now. The mental health it affects is many people have been found with anxiety and depression symptoms linked directly to social media and what is known as social multitasking. The need to feel inside the loop and have all these applications, social media accounts, to feel connected to everyone at every point. An article featured on sociallyactive.com said Facebook depression has become increasingly common among teens and young adults. This means teens and young adults are already walking around with this with this need to compare themselves to everyone. Having these media sites just allows ourselves to compare to each other 24/7. Who's wearing what? I should look like this. I need to look like this because this is what they look like. It hinders Depression and anxiety are not the only weapons used against teens by social media. Cyberbullying has become an increasing epidemic among teens and young people. 43% of teens have admitted to being bullied online, and 1 in 4 admit that it's been done on one or more occasions. In 2013, a 12-year-old girl was found in an abandoned cement factory after jumping to her death. With further investigation, it was found that she was a victim of cyberbullying. They found messages in her social media account saying, "Why are you alive? Kill yourself already." This cyberbullying followed her from 2 school districts. This just goes to show that bullies are no longer just at school. You can't just leave them when you leave school. They now follow you into your homes, into your everyday life, every action that you make. So to reiterate my statement that social media negatively affects our society we have today, it affects the student, the job market, and the mental health of our society in negative ways that will continue to increase and grow as social media increases and grows. Thank you.
Right, Kathleen, you do state the proposition. Again, it almost sounds like a question at the beginning because you've got that how thing that's going on. Just go with the declarative sentence. But kind of the declarative sentence preceded that almost. The secondary issues were rushed through, but they were labeled at the beginning of the speech. You need to kind of highlight them a little bit more. I thought that they were not very clearly signposted in the body of the speech. I could tell by listening to the information and the descriptions of events that you were talking about sort of what the general inference was, but I didn't really see that skeletal structure being signposted during the presentation, and there were a couple of spots where it wasn't clear how that information that you were presenting at the time was supposed to be utilized, and it did feel in a couple of spots like you were jumping back and forth on a point. There are a lot of side routes that you go down as well. Because there's a discussion of social multitasking, social comparison, cyberbullying, and I'm not sure if those are all supposed to be distinct points on their own, or if they fit together in a single category, or one's a separate category and the other two are illustrations of a point that you're making. Like I said, I think that the signposting in the body of the speech was a little bit problematic. The evidence, on the other hand, is pretty good. I do think that it needs to be structured a little bit more effectively to get the impact out of it that is available there. But you did a good job citing sources for the most part. There was a diversity, there was statistical information, and I heard testimony as well. I did think that you had a couple of examples that seemed like most hypotheticals, but there was also a couple of actual examples that you went along with on that. I could have used some proof. For instance, you had the self-reported criticism from your class about the iPads, how they felt about those kinds of things. The first question that I had, though, was, were the grades lower as a consequence than they might have been otherwise? Because that seems to be the inference that you're making, and I'm not exactly sure that we got that particular conclusion. I could see that there's a lot of distraction that goes on, but there was inconsistency on those numbers. You at one point had an average of 6 hours wasted a month, and then the high school students you're talking about, they're wasting 12 hours a day. And I'm not exactly sure why scrolling through information is automatically a waste of time. If people are scrolling through information about what people are eating, maybe that's a waste of time. But if they're scrolling through articles that have been posted by somebody else, that seems to me like just a different way of consuming information that we used to get in the past on the news or in newspapers. So why is that particularly harmful? There, on the one point where you talk about the potential problem of students or young people not being able to socially interact, I think that you've got a couple of hypotheticals. Being asking for directions, for instance, is an interesting idea, and you've got one piece of testimony here that suggests that that's a possibility. I think that that's a good start, but I'm not exactly sure that it's sufficient to be convincing on that particular point. I did think at the end of the speech that the summary helped structure it a little bit more effectively. That when you came back to that structure that you had, it was clearer how all of these points that you presented fit together, and I thought you had a pretty effective exit at the end. All right. Thank you.